All right, Hotep, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Sunday, April 17th, 2022, and we are live. So originally I was not scheduled to broadcast today. The radio station is shut down because it's Easter Sunday. So normally my show is on Sundays 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But so since the radio station was shut down, I wasn't going to broadcast today. I have other things scheduled to do. But because this is Easter Sunday, and because of the Facebook post that I did earlier today, and it's got over 300 likes and it's gotten hundreds of comments, I said, okay, so look, I'm going to come on and we'll do a quick broadcast. It's gotten 125 comments so far. So I said I'm going to come on and talk briefly about Easter, origins of Easter, pagan traditions, rabbits laying chicken eggs, and African Americans. All right. So share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in as well. Turn on live notifications when you so you know when we go live. Follow us at The African History Network on Facebook and Michael Imhotep on YouTube. Imhotep. All right, now I have some slides to show you, probably because I was working on my PowerPoint presentation before I came on. So I've talked about the history of Easter going back to like 2011. I went through my archives. I was looking at some of my notes going back to 2011, dealing with the history of Christmas. Now, history of Easter. Now, I'm not telling anybody don't celebrate Easter, okay? But what I'm saying is we should at least know the history of what it is that we're celebrating, okay? I'm not telling somebody don't celebrate Easter, but we should at least know the history of what it is that we're celebrating. And just as when I talk about celebrating Christmas or St. Patrick's Day, things like this, I have to reference, Dr. Shaka Musa Barashango in his two books, African People and European Holidays and Mental Genocide, book 1 and book 2, because in these books, he goes through and breaks down the history of all these European holidays that we have been taught to celebrate. Okay. So I'm not saying don't celebrate Easter. Okay. I'm saying we should at least know the history behind, like the historical origins behind what it is we've been taught to celebrate. Okay. And I know I may say some things that are outside the circumference of some people's awareness. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my disclaimer that I usually do when I deal with quote unquote controversial information like this. And I learned this from one of my teachers, Dr. Ray Hagins. Let me pull this up here. So I usually, when I do my presentations and when I do lectures, especially in front of mixed audiences, things like this, I know I may say some things that are outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard it before, disagree with it, or don't like it does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what it is that I'm talking about. So I usually have people put their fingers together to form a circle. And I usually say something like this: the space inside this circle represents my realm of knowledge. Everything that I think I know about whatever I think I know is represented within the circumference of this circle. I must keep in mind that there are still things to know that exist outside the circumference of my own awareness. Now, the reason why I say this, and if you ever see me do lectures, especially in person, I usually say something like this because people come to these different presentations with different levels of understanding of history. Okay. And half our people still think Willie Lynch historically existed, which goes to another Facebook post I did today, dealing with the fact that Willie Lynch is fictitious and the Willie Lynch letters are fraud, and Willie Lynch never historically existed. And some of our people can't give it up and turn it loose, like En Vogue said. En Vogue said, give it up and turn it loose. Some of our people just want to hold on to these myths for whatever reason. I don't know, but they don't want to deal with real history. They want to hold on to myths. So just because you know everything that you know about what you know does not mean that you know everything there is to know about what you know. There's still things that exist outside the circumference of your own awareness. And I learned that from Dr. Ray Hagins. Now, here is the Facebook post that I did today, this morning. And got a bigger response than I thought it would get. And people are still liking it and commenting on it. Let me go to it right here. Hold on, where is it? This right here. Okay, so so far it's got like 346 likes and 125 comments. We did this on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and on my personal page, Michael Imhotep. So I said Easter is a movable Christian holiday because a lot of people don't know what determines when Easter is celebrated. It's usually on a different Sunday each year. Okay. A lot of people don't know why it's a different Sunday, why it's a movable feast, what determines when Easter is celebrated. So Easter is a movable Christian holiday. It is celebrated on the first Sunday following the first full moon, following the vernal equinox. And I'm going to pull this up also here. Let's see. I'm going to pull this slide up so it'll be easier for you to see it. You can check this out on our Facebook fan page and the African History Network and comment if you want to. Where is this? Okay, let me see. I think if I do it this way, it'll be easier for you to see it. Let's do it like this. Okay. All right. So Easter is a movable Christian holiday. It is celebrated on the first Sunday, following the first full moon, following the vernal equinox. The vernal equinox marks the first day of spring. Vernal in Latin means spring. And equinox comes from aquanatium, which means equal nights. The vernal equinox is the day of the year where you have the same amount of daylight as same amount of daylight as nighttime. So it's usually March 20th, March 21st. That marks the first day of spring, the vernal equinox. Spring has nothing to do with a rodent seeing its shadow or not seeing its shadow. The groundhog. Spring has nothing to, when spring comes, has nothing to do with the groundhog seeing its shadow or not seeing its shadow. Now, the vernal equinox marks the first day of spring, which usually comes March 20th or March 21st. When Easter is celebrated, is based upon astronomy. To determine when Easter is celebrated is based upon astronomy, and this was one of the results of the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, one of the 21 ecumenical councils held between 325 AD and 1870. Okay, that's history. You can look up Easter in an encyclopedia or dictionary, and it would tell you when Easter is celebrated, what that's determined by. It's determined by astronomy. Okay, now, if we go and look here at, if we start looking at this briefly, then there are going to be some articles that I reference as well. Okay. So when we look at the history of Easter, we're going to look at what are called, we're going to look at some of the pre-Christian celebrations and pre-Christian holidays surrounding Easter, or what people call pagan traditions. Okay. Or what people call pagan traditions. Just a second here. Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide here. And you're going to deal with the goddess Istra and Ostara. Okay, Germanic goddesses associated with spring and fertility. Depending upon which European language you're looking at, you may see some different variations in the spelling of their names. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the Passover story as well, in the Exodus of Jews or Hebrews out of Egypt. And when you actually understand the story and the average size of a Hebrew family back then, you know, you're talking about approximately 1.5 million to 2 million people wandering in the desert for 40 years. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that, because I ain't trying to make this long and drawn out. So Easter is a movable feast. What determines when Easter is celebrated? Why is it on a different day each year? We talked a little bit about that already. So if we look at American Heritage Dictionary, we're going to look at some different sources. We look at American Heritage Dictionary. Easter, Easter, is a Christian feast commemorating the resurrection of Jesus or Yeshua. Now, there's been a shift over the past few years to refer to it more as Resurrection Day as opposed to Easter, because some Christians realize the quote unquote pagan origins, secular celebrations, the Easter bunny, Easter eggs, rabbits laying chicken eggs right there should confuse people. They say, why are you dealing with rabbits laying chicken eggs? Rabbits don't lay chicken eggs, but okay. So you hear it referred to as Resurrection Sunday, but a lot of people don't even know why it's celebrated on a different Sunday each year. So Easter is the most significant Christian holiday, okay, out of all the Christian holidays. Even though Christmas is probably the most commercial, Easter is the most significant, okay? It commemorates the resurrection of Yeshua ben Yosef, or what they call Jesus. The letter J didn't exist until 1630 AD, okay? The letter J is derived from the letter I, and the letter J did not always exist. So the letter J didn't exist in 1630 AD. So when you look up the word Jesus in the dictionary, and you can use Webster or what have you, you can use etymological dictionaries, the etymological dictionaries that I use, especially when I teach my online history classes. It takes you back to Yeshua. Okay, so this deals with, if we look up Jesus, and I did this recently in one of my classes. Let me see here. We got this. Yeah. Okay, so if we look at this here, so this is one of the online etymological encyclopedias that I use, or etymological dictionaries. Etymonline.com, ETYM online.com. And they're dealing with word origins. Okay, so if we look up the word Jesus in the etymological dictionary, or you can go to Webster. Webster is on Webster Dictionary is on online. You can go to Encyclopedia Britannica. I'm on Britannica's website very often because I pay them a subscription each month because I use them when I teach my classes. So if you look at the word Jesus, it takes you back to it's from late Latin Iesus with an I, Iesus with an I, from the Greek Iosu, Iesus. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. Iesous. Okay, so you go from the late Latin Iesus to Isus, Greek Iesous, which is an attempt to render into Greek the Aramaic Semitic proper name Jeshua, Hebrew Yeshua, or Yahshua, which means Jah is salvation, But it takes you back to the Hebrew Yeshua with a Y, because the letter J didn't exist when the Bible was written. When the Bible was written, the letter J didn't exist. And then if you look in the Holy Quran, the prophet's name is Isa with an I, because when the Quran was written, the letter J didn't exist. Okay, so you go through and read the rest of this here. All right, so we're dealing with the English variation of coming from late Latin, Greek, Hebrew. All right, so check that out. Now, if we go to let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. So Easter, a Christian feast commemorating the resurrection of Yeshua, or Jesus in English. The day on which this feast is observed, the first Sunday following the full moon that occurs on or next after the vernal equinox. Now, this is from American Heritage Dictionary, explaining to you that what determines when Easter is celebrated is based upon astronomy, which was one of the end results of the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Then it tells you Middle English, Esther, from Old English, Eastre, E-A-S-T-R-E, Eastre. Okay, so we need to look at these, we need to study the etymology of these words. It also teaches us history at the same time. All right, so let's continue here. Now, what is Easter? Easter is a Christian holiday that celebrates the belief in the resurrection of Yeshua, or Jesus the Christ. Now they say Jesus Christ, but it's actually Jesus the Christ. Okay, because Christ is a title, not a name. Christ coming from Christos, the Greek Christos means anointed or anointed one, coming from the Kemetic or the metal letter Karest, K-A-R-S-T, Karest, meaning the rising of the spirit. Karest. Okay, this is where this comes from. Now, in the New Testament of the Helios Biblos, the Sun Book or the Holy Bible, in the New Testament, the event is said to have occurred 3 days after Jesus was crucified by the Romans and died in roughly 30 AD. Died in roughly 30 AD. Okay. Now, this is from history.com, official website of the History Channel, Easter 2022. Okay. And they're talking about Easter. It's talking about a brief synopsis of Easter. But if you look at, I was looking at BibleGateway.com yesterday because I was watching a presentation. And if you look at 1 Corinthians, let me see here, BibleGateway.com. It's in the, let me see, it's in the, not the King James Version. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, 15:4. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 4. Okay. Right here. Okay. Let me pull this up. Because I'm in Google Chrome. I have it up in Firefox, but I'm in Google Chrome right now. Because I was just looking at this yesterday. New International Version, NIV, 1 Corinthians 15:4. And that he was buried and he rose again the third day, according to the scriptures. Okay, rose again on the third day. All right. Okay, let's continue here. All right. So the holiday concludes the Passion of Christ, a series of events, and begins with Lent, a 40-day period of fasting, prayer, and sacrifice, and ends with Holy Week, which includes Holy Thursday, the celebration of Jesus' Last Supper with his 12 apostles, also known as Maundy Thursday. Then you have Good Friday, on which Yeshua was crucified. The crucifixion of Yeshua is observed, and Easter Sunday. Although a holiday of high religious significance in the Christian faith, many traditions associated with Easter date back to pre-Christian pagan times. Now, this is history.com, official website of the History Channel, that breaks this down. And they make the relationship. And I looked at numerous sources on this. You look at Britannica, you look at this article here from time.com. You could look at, I've got stuff I printed up back in 2011 from when answers.com existed. Now it's encyclopedia.com. They reference 200 online encyclopedias. When you go study this history, it takes you back to pre-Christian origins, especially what are called pagan traditions, especially what are called pagan traditions. So we'll talk about pagan in just a minute, because pagan doesn't necessarily mean something negative. It's just it has taken on a negative taint. It has taken on a negative tone. All right. And this is like, these are some of my notes here. Okay, so this is when answers.com existed. I printed this up April 12th, 2011, because I have hundreds of articles going back to actually thousands, really thousands, going back over the years. But I'm just looking at stuff that I printed up from answers.com and MSN and Carta. MSN and Carta doesn't even exist. I've got binders of historical information from MSN and Carta. But this is 35 pages. This all deals with the history of Easter from different online encyclopedias, different sources. Okay. This is when answers.com existed. And the Gale Encyclopedia of Food and Culture has some good information. Now, encyclopedia.com took over from answers.com. So encyclopedia.com, they reference about 200 different online encyclopedias on all different topics. Okay, so if we go back here to this right here. All right, so we have just a basic understanding of the Easter celebration, the largest, the most important celebration in most important holiday in Christianity. Now, in Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which adheres to the Julian calendar, not the Gregorian calendar, Orthodox Easter falls on Sunday between April 4th and May 8th each year. Now, in some denominations of Protestant Christianity, we know about the Protestant Reformation, 1517 with Martin Luther. And when we deal with the Councils of Trent, the three Councils of Trent from about 1545 to 1563, the Councils of Trent were designed to, one of the reasons why they were convened was to deal with the fallout from the Protestant Reformation and the Catholic Church losing so many people because of the Protestant Reformation. Okay, we'll talk about the Third Council of Trent, 1563, in just a minute. So in some denominations of Protestant Christianity, Easter Sunday marks the beginning of Easter tide, or the Easter season, also called Easter tide. Easter tide ends on the 50th day after Easter, which is known as Pentecost Sunday. Penta in reference to 5, Pentecost Sunday. Okay. Now, in Eastern Orthodox branches, Easter Sunday serves as the start of the season of Pascha, which is Greek for Passover, which ends 40 days later with the holiday known as the Feast of the Ascension. Okay, so what determines when Easter's celebrated? Okay, we talk about the first Sunday following the first full moon, following the vernal equinox. Well, when did they come up with that? So the complicated dating for Easter was set in 325 AD at the First Council of Nicaea, which scheduled the festival to be celebrated on the first Sunday following the first full moon, occurring next after the vernal equinox, right about March 21st. Okay. However, if the full moon occurs on a Sunday, Easter will be celebrated the following Sunday. Hence, the date of Easter can fluctuate between March 22nd and April 25th. Okay. This is the period of time that Easter happens, between March 22nd and April 25th, because the Western churches, Catholic and Protestant, now follow the Gregorian calendar introduced in 1582 AD by Pope Gregory the 13th, but Pope Gregory the 16th in 1582. Pope Gregory the 13th, let's say 1582 AD. Because the Western churches, Catholic and Protestant, now follow the Gregorian calendar, the Eastern churches, which follow the unrevised Julian calendar, celebrate Easter and other church holidays on different dates. In the Orthodox Church, Easter marks the beginning of the ecclesiastical year. Okay, you can reference encyclopedia.com and the information they have on Easter, but also the Gale Encyclopedia, Gale, the Gale Encyclopedia on food and culture has information on Easter, the origins of Easter, what determines when Easter is celebrated, things like this. Okay. Now let's continue. How's everybody doing? Also, I'll give you information about the online classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays as well. We have class number 1 of ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, starting up Saturday, April 23rd. It's going to be 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's a 10-week online class that I teach. Now, where does the name Easter come from? Okay, so when you study history and you study the dating systems of AD and BC, AD meaning Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord, BC meaning before Christ, you'll read about Saint Bede the Venerable, also referred to as the Venerable Bede, B-E-D-E. He was a 8th century Christian monk, okay, or they may say Christian priest. But Saint Bede the Venerable, the 8th century author of Ecclesiastical History of the English People, maintains that the English word Easter, E-A-S-T-E-R, comes from Eostre, E-O-S-T-R-E, or Eostre, E-O-S-T-R-A-E, the Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and fertility. The Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and fertility, Eostra or Eostre, however you pronounce it. And she was associated with spring and fertility. Spring dealing with rebirth, things growing again. Okay. Other historians maintain that Easter derives from in albis, a Latin phrase that's plural for alba or dawn, D-A-W-N, dawn, that becomes Eastarum in Old High German, E-O-S-T-A-R-U-M. a precursor to the English language of today. Now, despite its significance as a Christian holiday or holy day, many of the traditions and symbols that play a key role in Easter in Easter observances actually have roots in pagan celebrations, particularly the pagan goddess Eostra and in the Jewish holiday of Passover. Now, this is from history.com in their piece on Easter. Okay. So when you start studying this history, it takes you into different areas and it takes you into different cultures and different languages. All right. And you start dealing with the pre-Christian origin. Same thing with Christmas. The origins of Christmas is one of the most, is probably the most fascinating of all these European holidays we've been taught to celebrate. And I was studying the history of Christmas going back to probably 2010, something like that. All right, so what does the word pagan mean? Because we keep hearing this word pagan, right? And we've been taught that pagan is something negative. So what does the word pagan mean? Pagan is a word that is misused to speak negatively about a group of people, especially it's used when you talk about non-Christian people or you talk about in pre-Christian history, okay? And they talk about ancient Africans, they talk about ancient Egyptians and things that they were pagan and all this stuff like this, right? To demean them, to denigrate them, but at the same time, Europeans steal aspects of African history and culture for their own benefit and try to claim it as their own. So the American Heritage Dictionary defines pagan as an adherent of a polytheistic religion in antiquity, especially when viewed in contrast to an adherent of a monotheistic religion. But see, the problem is that when you study traditional African spiritual systems, even though they had different emissaries and different helpers of the creator, you know, Olodumares in the Orisha or emissaries and manifestations of the one supreme force, Olodumare amongst the Yoruba and Ifa. You have Amun-Ra Ptah, the supreme being, God in when you deal with ancient Kemet, things like this. They have different helpers, different emissaries, different manifestations, the Neteru, the different forces of nature, the different manifestations of that one supreme force. But you have the same thing in Christianity, because the angels are helpers of the creator, of God in Christianity, and the saints or patron saints are going to replace the Neteru in Christianity. So when you look at, for instance, if we go and look at Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder, and I actually deal with a lot of this in the online classes that I teach. But if we look here briefly at, okay, do we want to get, let's see, do I want to get that deep into it? Let's just keep it simple. Let's just keep it simple. Let's look at this right here. This is from page, this is Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, was this page 163. Oh, I think it's 163, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. And Browder is showing how the Greeks and Romans, their deities were influenced by the deities in ancient Kemet. So he talks about Dahuti. And Dahuti, you see here, number one, Dahuti is the ibis-headed neter coming out of ancient Kemet, who is the deity of divine articulation of speech, writing, measurement, things like this. And Dahuti is depicted with a staff, holding a staff, two staffs that have a snake wrapped around each staff. And one snake, and one snake is wearing the crown of Upper Kemet. The other snake is wearing the crown of Lower Kemet. Okay, so we see Tahuti. And if we, let me see, let's advance to the next slide here. So it says Tahuti, the nectar of science, writing, measurement, divine articulation of speech, and medicine, holds in his hand two staffs with entwined snakes. One serpent wears the crown of Upper Kemet, the other wears the crown of Lower Kemet. Tahuti was referred to as Thoth by the Greeks. Okay, then the second one he showed you in the middle, the deity in the second is Hermes, who was the Greek equivalent of Tahuti. Okay, so Hermes, we see Hermes with the winged feet, and we see the Hermes is carrying a staff over his left shoulder. Okay, so Hermes is the Greek equivalent of Tahuti. So when we look at the attributes of Hermes, because all these deities have attributes, the same thing when we look at the angels in Christianity, who are helpers of God. Okay, you have different types of angels. You have warrior angels like Michael. You have messenger angels like Gabriel. Okay, and then we're going to talk about patron saints in a minute, because the patron saints in Christianity, who also have different attributes, replace the Neteru. Now, Hermes was the Greek equivalent of Tahuti, who was shown carrying a staff with two entwined snakes. It was called the staff of Hermes. In Greek mythology, Hermes was associated with wisdom, and the Hermetic sciences were named in his honor. And then the Hermetic sciences, Hermes Trismegistus, that is essential to when we deal with Freemasonry. And we know Freemasonry, the foundation of Freemasonry, comes out of ancient Kemet and the Nile Valley region of Africa. And it's the African Moors who take the teachings from ancient Kemet into Europe in 711 AD. And they're going to teach this to Europeans to our detriment, because everything we taught Europeans came back to kick us in the behind. Now, the third deity that you have here is Mercury. Okay, amongst the Romans, even though he says Greek here, but it's Mercury amongst the Romans. They may have had Mercury with the Greeks, but it's basically with the Romans. Mercury is the Roman version of Hermes and Tahuti, and he is similar in all aspects. The staff that Mercury carries is called the caduceus, and it has been adopted as the universal symbol of medicine. So when you look at the caduceus, do I have the caduceus here? Hold on, let me see. Yeah, right here. When we look at the caduceus and variations of the caduceus, you're looking at African culture. This comes straight from us. They stole our stuff, represented it as their own, made it seem like they created this stuff in the first place. These are culture bandits, and then represented to the world like they created it themselves. You look right here, Arizona Latin American Medical Association. These are slides I created myself. I went and researched this. The American Medical Association has a stick with one snake wrapped around it. That's a variation of the caduceus. Right here, the Arizona Latin American Medical Association, you see the two snakes wrapped around. You see the staff with the wings of Ra and a sun disk. Just straight out of African culture. Then you look at the dentist association, dentistry. They have the stick, they have the staff with a snake wrapped around it. Straight out of Africa. And then we've been taught to hate who we are, love who we can't be, while they're still in our culture. And then represented to the world like they created it themselves. Okay, so when we look at, so we see that this comes from ancient Kemet. Now, we go even deeper, and then I'm going to get right back to Easter, but this is still right on the same subject. To go even deeper, we talk about Tahuti, right? And let me see, is this the right slide? Is this the right? Do I have, because I have it blown up. Hold on, where is it where I have it blown up? It's in, oh, I know what it is. It's in another presentation. Hold on. Let me show you this. Okay, so let me pull this up here. Looking at Dahuti. What I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Okay, just because you disagree with it or don't like it does not mean it's not true. It just means you may have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. So when we talk about the concept of the virgin birth, the adoration, and the virgin birth and the adoration, the immaculate conception, things like this, right? These are ancient African principles. And let me try to open this back up. Hold on. Okay, here we go. These are ancient African principles. And a lot of this we've been taught to run away from. Okay, we've been taught to run away from it. And just to be perfectly honest with you, and I'm trying to say this as delicately as I can. We have to understand the difference between world history and religious literature. Okay, just to say it as delicately as I can. We have to understand the difference between world history and religious literature. Okay, world history is what happened, when it happened, how it happened, who, what, when, why, where, how, the names of the people, things like this. Historical events, places, times, dates, things like this. This is world history. Okay. World history is in world history books. Religious literature and world history are not the same thing. Okay. World history is in world history books. Religious literature is in religious literature. Okay. So I'm not saying don't believe what you don't believe, but I'm saying you have to know where to look for what it is that you are searching for. Okay, so we have to. You ever go to historical museums? You ever go to historical museums and they have, they have statues and artifacts and things like this from ancient Africa or West Africa or what have you, or they have them from Europe, they have them from China, different things like this, right? When you go to historical museums, this may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Do you ever wonder why you don't see biblical characters in historical museums? I mean, if they do have biblical characters in historical museums, it's like the biblical section. Okay, they may have a statue of the Virgin Mary, and the information they say may say according to the Bible, such and such. But usually, when you go to historical museums, they usually don't have biblical characters there. You may find an exception here and there, but the overwhelming majority, 95, 98, 99% of what you see in historical museums is not biblical characters. Okay, so we have to understand the difference. Okay, that's what I'm saying. We have to understand the difference. Doesn't mean that there aren't truths in religious texts and things like this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying world history is in world history books. Religious literature is something different. Even though they talk about occurrences in different parts of the world that exist, Egypt and Jerusalem and things like this, right? That's how people get confused. So if we look here at page 95, very quickly, non-belly contributions to civilization, because I really ain't planning here to be this long. really didn't plan to be here this long, but page 95, Browder talks about the story of Asar, Auset, and Heru is the first story in the recorded history of a man of a holy royal family, the Trinity, immaculate conception, virgin birth, and resurrection. Immaculate conception, virgin birth, and resurrection. Evidence of this Trinity is known to have existed in ancient Nubia or Ta-Nehesi as late as 3,300 BCE, before the Common Era, before Christ, 3,300 years before the Common Era, before Christ, at least to have known is known to have existed in ancient Nubia as late as 3,300 BCE. This is a ancient story that's retold over and over and over and over again, adapted to various people's cultures. Read all the stories. That's fine. I'm not saying don't read that one, read this one. Read all the stories. That's fine. Carved on the walls of the temple of Luxor, circa 1380 BCE, before the Common Era or before Christ, are the scenes which depict the following. 1, the Annunciation. The Neter Dahuti, who we just talked about, okay, Dahuti, who had the two staffs with a snake wrapped around each staff, who's the Neter, a divine articulation of speech, is also the Neter that records in the book the results of when your heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at when you die at the judgment scene, and when your heart is weighed on the scales of Ma'at. Okay, that's another conversation. The Annunciation, the Neter Dahuti, is shown announcing to the virgin Auset the coming of Heru. Okay, let me see. Let's go back to this here. Okay, the Neter Dahuti is shown announcing to the virgin Auset the coming birth of their son Heru, who the Greeks called Horus. Number 2, the Immaculate Conception. So the bottom you see panel 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you see the Neter Dahuti, with the ibis head, the head of the ibis bird, announcing to Auset, the virgin, who the Greeks called Isis, the coming birth of their son Heru. Then the second panel, the Immaculate Conception. The Neter Neph, Kneph, who represents the Holy Ghost, and the Neter Het Heru, who the Greeks called Hathor, are shown symbolically impregnating Auset by holding the Ankh, which is the African symbol of eternal life, or the African key of life, the Ankh, Ankh, holding the Ankh to her nostrils of the virgin mother to be. They are symbolically impregnating Auset, the virgin. Now, when you look at the constellation of Virgo, when you study astronomy and you look at the constellation of Virgo, Virgo is called the Virgin. But the word Virgo is Latin for virgin. The word Virgo is Latin for virgin. In ancient times, the constellation of Virgo was the constellation of Auset, the virgin. So if we go back and look, and then panel number 3 at the top, panel number 3, the virgin birth. Auset is shown sitting on the birthing stool, and the newborn child is attended by midwives. because we knew that it made more sense to sit on the birthing stool and let gravity take its course than lay on your back and try to push the baby out. And then number 4 at the bottom, the adoration. The adoration. The newborn Heru is portrayed receiving gifts from 3 kings or magi while being adored by a host of gods and men. Does any of this sound familiar? And we know in the Helios Biblos, the some book, it doesn't tell how many wise men. The 3 is in reference to the 3 stars in Orion's belt. Orion the hunter, the 3 stars in Orion's belt, and then the star Sirius, which was the star in the east. That in the story of the wise men, the 3 wise men, they said they follow a star in the east. But when you look at, they said they came from the Orient. In the story, they said they came from the Orient, and they were headed to Bethlehem. Okay. And they follow the star in the east. So that's the star Sirius, which is in the constellation of Canis Major, the big dog, the big dog, the star Sirius, the dog star. And now the problem is that Bethlehem and where they were headed is to the west of the Orient. So why would you see a star in the east and go west? I mean, this may go outside the compass of some people's awareness. This is a story. Okay. This is a story. So it's a higher meaning to the story. It's an allegory, something like that, but it's a story. When you look at a map, Bethlehem is to the west of the Orient. So why would you see a star in the east and go west? And they're on camelback. We're not gonna get into the distance that they had to travel on camelback, but anyway. But read Christianity Before Christ by Dr. John G. Jackson also, which gets deep into a lot of this history and the pre-Christian origin and where a lot of these stories come from. Then it deals with the different crucified saviors as well. Okay, Christianity Before Christ by Dr. John G. Jackson. Kersey Gray's book, The World's 16 Crucified Saviors, does it also. He deals with about 27 crucified saviors as well. So check that out. Okay. So this is a retelling of our ancient story that goes throughout different cultures, and the names are changed and things like this, right? Now, in the Christian story, just as it was Dehuti who delivered the Annunciation to the Virgin Alset that she was going to give birth to Heru, okay, in the Christian story, it is Gabriel, is Gabriel, the messenger angel, who delivers the message to the Virgin Mary that she's going to give birth to Yeshua. So as we looked at the chart here from, let me see, I'm flipping between right here. As we looked at the chart here from page 168, Now Valley Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder, you go from Dehuti in ancient Kemet to Hermes in Greek, Mercury in Rome, and Gabriel, the messenger angel, who delivers the Annunciation to the Virgin Mary, just like Dehuti delivered the Annunciation to Auset. Okay, now when we look at patron saints very quickly to understand the connection between all this, because we see as they go through different cultures, they're taking different aspects from African spirituality infusing it into different European cultures, and we see this with the deities. Now, if we look here at, let me see. I want to go. Oh, I didn't want to close that out. If we look here at, I want to go to this next, yeah, right here. So this little chart right here shows how different deities from ancient Kemet, African deities, get incorporated into Greek mythology, then Roman mythology, and how these different, they do a comparative analysis between these different deities, and it shows how they have the same aspects. So if you look at Amun, okay, who is the creator Amun, or Amun Ra, Amen, Amun Ra. This is where the word I'm a man, what they call it, say amen or amen, comes from. That's in Christianity. That comes from ancient Kemet. Amun in Greece, in the Greek mythology, Zeus would be the equivalent. When you study Zeus in Greek mythology, they tell you Zeus comes from Ethiopia, because Zeus was originally African. Zeus was originally black. Okay. It's going to be later that he gets depicted as a European. Zeus in Greek mythology, they tell you Zeus comes from Ethiopia, just like Hercules was black in Greek mythology. In Rome, you have Jupiter, and they're the ruler of the deities. Okay. The ruler of the gods, ruler of the deities. Bes, in ancient Kemet, Dionysus in Greek, and Bacchus in Rome, god of wine and reckless behavior. Dehuti, Thoth, Hermes, Greek, Mercury, Rome, messenger of the gods and god of science. Het Heru, Hathor in ancient Kemet, Aphrodite in Greece, Venus in Rome, goddess of love and beauty. Heru or Horus in amongst the Greek and Romans, Apollo, the son of God, also associated with light and the sun. And a lot of depictions that you see of Jesus, he has a sun disk behind his head. Imhotep, ancient Kemet, Asclepius in Greece, and Asclepius in Rome, god of healing. Neat in ancient Kemet, in Greece, Athena, Rome, Minerva, goddess of crafts, war, and wisdom. Okay, so lastly, we look at patron saints to tie all this together. What's a patron saint? Because when you look at what happened with Christianity, they removed the Neteru from ancient Kemet. They removed those deities, replaced them with the patron saints, because the Neteru were said to have watched over groups of people. Different cities had a different deity that they said watched over them and protected them, in addition to the supreme force, the supreme being. Okay. Well, that's the same thing that you have in Christianity with patron saints. Just like Saint Maurice was a patron saint who was a Moor. Saint Maurice, he was a patron saint to Germany. What's a patron saint? We look at Britannica Concise Encyclopedia. Well, you can pick your source that you want to look at for patron saints. A saint whose protection and intercession a person, society, church, place, profession, or activity is dedicated. The choice is usually made on the basis of some real or presumed relationship. For example, St. Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland because he is credited with introducing Christianity there, even though he was a mass murderer and killed the Druids and killed the Irish people, killed thousands of them. He was a mass murderer. He was sent in for, go watch the presentation I did dealing with the history of St. Patrick's Day and St. Patrick, and African Americans celebrating St. Patrick's Day, honoring a mass murderer. Okay, so St. Patrick was a patron saint to Ireland. Then you look at um, St. Nicholas. Okay, St. Nicholas, well, originally St. Nicholas was black. He was African, because a lot of your early Christian saints were African saints. A lot of your early Christian saints were African saints. And Christianity, prior to the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, early Christianity looks a lot like traditional African spiritual systems also. It's at these ecumenical councils where they're going to change what is believed, what is taught, what is written. All all that stuff gets changed at the ecumenical councils. But you have Saint Maurice the Moor, patron saint of Germany, Saint Patrick of Ireland, Saint Nicholas, who's a patron saint of Amsterdam and Russia. But Saint Nicholas is also a patron saint to children, prostitutes, pawnbrokers, money lenders, seamen, navy men, things like this. Saint Nicholas was a patron saint to all those people. Saint Benedict the Moor of Palermo and San Fratello, Sicily. He's also called Il Moro, with Italian for dark-skinned. Okay, he was a patron saint as well. So when you look at the patron saints replaced the Neteru. This is some original depictions of Saint Nicholas, who the secular character, the mythological character of Santa Claus is a combination of Sinterklaas coming from the Dutch, okay, and then also combining with the real Saint Nicholas, because Sinterklaas is Dutch, which means Saint Nicholas. Okay, you do with Sinterklaas and Joie de Piet, Black Pete the Moor, who was his helper, or in some versions of the story, he would Joie de Piet was enslaved. Okay, so you get into this history, you get into the history of the Moors, you get into evidence of the history of the Moors in Europe. But who was Saint Nicholas? Greek Orthodox bishop, born in 280 AD in Myra, present-day Turkey. Born to wealthy parents, and gave away his inheritance to the poor, patron saint to children, patron saint to children, seamen, prostitutes, pawnbrokers, etc. Read Christmas Miscellany by Jonathan Green, pages 40 and 63 through 64. He deals with some of the myths about Saint Nicholas. Okay, there's one myth about him saving some boys who were stuck in the barrel. There's another myth about him saving some girls from prostitution. See. Turkish time. Right. Okay. All right, let's continue here. Now, also, if you like this type of information, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like. You can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. That helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. And then we have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. We have if you've been watching my show, you know I talked about the fake African History Network Cash App accounts out there. So I've made progress. Cash App is launching an investigation into them. I was actually able to get correspondence with the right people at Cash App. So I'm making progress on that. This is an official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show, SHOW. When you go to it, it says Michael and shows my picture there. We have the link here and our PayPal button. And then also our 10 week online class is starting up Saturday, April 23rd. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade they didn't teach you in school. Class number 1 starts up 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday, April 23rd. We do 3 years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded, so you can go back and watch it anytime. A year from now, you can go back and watch the entire course, okay? So we have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. The second class that I teach is From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. That's on Sundays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. We have a new session of that starting up also. And we have a bundle pack. You can register for both classes for $120. That's a $260 value. If you've taken any of my online classes in the past, email me at AHNShow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AHNShow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You get a 50% discount on the courses in the bundle pack. Okay, let's continue. Okay, somebody asked a question. Can you tell me the name of those books again? Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder. And at the beginning, we talked about African people and European holidays and mental genocide by Dr. Shaka Musa Barashango. Book 1 and book 2, where he goes through and breaks down the history of all these European holidays we've been taught to celebrate. So once again, I'm not saying don't celebrate the holidays. What I'm saying is we should at least know the history of what it is that we're celebrating, so that you are informed, because many of us have not been taught the history of these holidays we've been taught to celebrate. And if you do choose to continue to celebrate it after you understand the history of what it is that you're celebrating, it will probably change how you participate in it because you'll be more educated. Okay, now let's continue. I want to go back to the PowerPoint presentation here just a second. Let me pull this back up. Okay, so that's patron saint. And then if you're not familiar with Joie de Piet, Black Pete, this is a depiction of Black Pete right here. Joie de Piet, Joie meaning dark or swarthy. And this is celebrated in Holland, okay, right around from November to part of November, and then going up to December 5th or 6th, they have these celebrations of Joie de Piet, Black Pete, in Holland, and you have Europeans putting on blackface, and they say that the center class is in Black Pete. They're coming on a steamboat from Spain. They're coming on a steamboat from Spain. Okay. Well, Spain is where was the Iberian Peninsula. And that's where the Moors conquered. That's where they go in 711 AD, Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula. And they conquer, and, they settle in Al-Andalus, the southern portion of Spain. If you look very quickly here, if you look at this article from the Washington Post, center class and Joie de Piet, while Holiday has me talking to my kids about blackface, they show center class here on this boat with white people in blackface pretending to be Joie de Piet the Moor, and they put on red lipstick and afro wigs, things like this. Okay, and they're coming to the Netherlands, but they're coming from Spain. The tradition is this: on the second Saturday of November, Joie de Piet, Black Pete, arrives in the Netherlands. Hold on, let me go back to this. Where is it here? On the second Saturday of November, Joie de Piet, Black Pete arrives in the Netherlands on a steamboat from Spain, along with center class, a towering, thin, and plushly dressed figure. Hundreds of people gather to watch the steamboat arrive, with the Piets dancing and waving while brass band music plays until Sinterklaas disembarks on the white horse, with the Piets walking at his side to greet and offer treats to children. The ritual repeats in various cities across the Netherlands until December 5th, the name day of St. Nicholas. Okay. Joie de Piet is, according to folklore, an assistant to Sinterklaas and of Moorish descent. Traditionally, since Piet's first appearance in a children's book in 1850, Joie de Piet is portrayed as a very dark-skinned character with large red lips, curly black hair, and giant hoop earrings. When Piets appear in person, they are portrayed by volunteers in blackface. So this is really making fun of the Moors, that they were conquered. Some are going to be enslaved, things like this. So each year there's been more and more in the Netherlands. There's been more and more protests against the celebration of Joie de Piet to shut it down because they're saying this is racist. Okay, now let me go back to, okay. Let me go back to this one here. I think I could close this one out. Let's go back to this one here. Okay, so we left off. Okay, let's go back to this here. We were talking about pagan. What does pagan mean? Okay, let's pull this back up. I'm going to go here. What does pagan mean? Just a second. Okay. No, I think it'll open back up. Here we go. Right there. Okay. Okay. So let's go back to this slide here. What does pagan mean? An adherent of a polytheistic religion in antiquity, especially when viewed in contrast to an adherent of a monotheistic religion. So I just talked about that. Middle at the bottom, Middle English from late Latin paganus. Paganus from Latin, which means country dweller. Civilian from pagus, which means country or rural district. So in its original form, it just referred to somebody who was, it just referred to something that was practiced by people in a rural district, country dwellers, something that was indigenous to a group of people. Okay, a practice that was indigenous to a group of people, something like that. It may be referred to like how you have people who live in the country and you may say, oh, they're in the country, they may be backwards or something like this, what have you, something like that. But over time, it became to mean something very negative, pagan. But in its original form, is not something negative. Now, where does the name Easter come from? Where does the name Easter come from? Like many other Christian feasts, the celebration of Easter contains a number of originally pagan or folk religious elements tolerated by the church. Among these are customs associated with the Easter egg, Easter breads, and other special holiday foods. and the European concept of the Easter hare, Hare, which is an animal, a bunny, a rabbit, an Easter hare, or in America, of the Easter rabbit, which brings baskets of candies and colored eggs during the night. Okay, the Easter bunny. The pagan roots of Easter involve the spring festivals of pre-Christian Europe and the Near East, which celebrate the rebirth of vegetation, welcoming the growing light as the sun becomes more powerful in its course toward summer. So it's things coming back to life. It's things go, a lot of vegetation and the leaves fall off the trees and things like this. So people wear vibrant colors, like for Easter, recognizing spring is coming back. So vegetation is going to start growing again. Things like this, the trees start budding with leaves, etc. Life is coming back. And we know that Easter comes after the first day of spring also. So it's in recognition of all of that, which celebrates the rebirth of vegetation, welcoming the growing light as the sun becomes more powerful in its course towards summer. It is significant that in England and Germany, the church accepted the name of the pagan goddess Easter, Anglo-Saxon Eostra, Eostra. Her name has several spellings. They accepted this for the new Christian holiday. So depending upon which European language that you're looking at, you'll see different variations of her name. All right, now let's look at I'll pull that up. Okay. In Mediterranean Europe, Italy, Spain, and France, Christianity adopted Pascha, a word derivative of Passover, from which comes the adjective paschal for things pertaining to Easter, such as the paschal lamb. The paschal lamb. Okay, and then when we talk about Germanic, the term Germanic is relating to a characteristic of Germany or its people, language, or culture. Of or relating to the branch of Indo-European language family that comprises North Germanic, West Germanic, and the extinct East Germanic. When you hear the term Germanic peoples, especially during medieval times, it can also refer to the barbarians. You hear it also referred to as barbarians. They talk about the Lombards, the Jutes, the Anglos, the Saxons, the Picts, the Alans, the Franks. It can also be in reference to what were collectively called barbarians. Now, goddesses Eostra and Ostara. Eostra and Ostara. The name Easter may have come from Eostra or Eastra, or Istra, however you pronounce it, Eastre, the Teutonic or Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and fertility, whose feast was celebrated around the start of spring. She is associated with the hare, Hare, and egg, both symbols of creation. Both symbols of creation. Ostara is a Germanic goddess who was always accompanied by a hare. possibly the ancestor of our modern Easter bunny. The association of both the rabbit and eggs with Easter is probably the vestige of an ancient springtime fertility rite, R-I-T-E. You can look at encyclopedia.com. They have information. History.com has information on that. They talk about Astara, things like this. Encyclopedia.com as well. This particular information on goddess Eostra and Astara, that comes from the Gale Encyclopedia on food and culture, but they have all this information at encyclopedia.com. There are different sources for this also, so you can look at different sources, not just one. I've looked at numerous sources on this. Now, okay, Mardi Gras or Fat Tuesday. What's Mardi Gras? Shrove Tuesday, celebrated as a holiday in many places with carnivals, masquerade balls, and parades of costume merrymakers. Mardi Gras, a carnival period coming to a climax on this day, an occasion of great festivity and merrymaking. Mardi, or Mardi, M-A-R-D-I, means Tuesday, and Gras, G-R-A-S, means fat. From the feasting on Mardi Gras becomes Lenten fasting, or Fat Tuesday. That's what Mardi Gras means. Okay, in French, Mardi Gras means Fat Tuesday. All right, now I'm gonna come to the 10 plagues here in just a second. Now, there's a good article from Time magazine that I was looking at, time.com. This piece right here. Here's why Easter eggs are a thing. Here's why Easter eggs are a thing. This was updated April 14th, 2022, originally published April 14th, 2017. You can read the entire article. I'm not going through the whole thing. This is what I want to look at here. But when it comes to Easter eggs, evidence suggests that the obvious metaphor came after the association between the holiday and the item was already established. The origin of Easter eggs starts in medieval Europe, but it may or may not have originated with Christians. According to some, the first Easter eggs actually belonged to a different religious tradition. Many scholars believe that Easter has its origins as an early Anglo-Saxon festival that celebrated the goddess Eastre, E-A-S-T-R-E, and the coming of spring, in a sense, a resurrection of nature after winter. In a sense, a resurrection of nature after winter, because things are coming back to life. Vegetation, plants, things like this are coming back to life. Carol Levin, professor of history and director of the Medieval and Renaissance Studies program at the University of Nebraska, tells Time magazine in an email, quote, some Christian missionaries hoped that celebrating Christian holy days at the same time as pagan festivals would encourage conversion to Christianity, especially if some of the symbols carried over. And this is what the Roman Empire did when they were conquering people. They would incorporate things that the people they were conquered celebrated and incorporated that into their various Christian celebrations. And we especially see this with Christmas. Eggs were part of the celebration of Easter. Apparently, eggs were eaten at the festival and also possibly buried in the ground to encourage fertility. Okay, so read the rest of this here. And we know that also rabbits are also a symbol of fertility because rabbits reproduce a lot. So rabbits are also a symbol of fertility as well. Okay, so we got time. I guess we get that. Okay, we did that. Now let's look at this here. I think this is the last thing. 10 plagues from the book of Exodus. Which one is that? Easter. Did I do that irrespective there? And then, okay, before we go to that, there was one other thing that I wanted to, okay, if we look at this one here on Easter from history.com, there was one other part on page 5. This right here, this one part on page 5 that deals with Easter eggs. Easter traditions. I want this one right here. Easter eggs, okay. Regardless of denomination, because irrespective is not a word. I don't think irrespective is a word. That's a double negative. I know irregardless is not a word. But anyway. Maybe it is a word, but it sounds like a double negative. But anyway. Okay. Yeah, okay, I think it is. Irregardless is not a word. But anyway. Right here. There are many Easter time traditions with roots that can be traced to non-Christian and even pagan or non-religious celebrations. Many non-Christians choose to observe these traditions while essentially ignoring the religious aspects of the celebration. Examples of non-religious Easter traditions include Easter eggs and related games such as egg rolling and egg decorating. It is believed that eggs represented fertility and birth in certain pagan traditions that predate Christianity. Egg decorating may have become part of the Easter celebration in a nod to the religious significance of Easter. For example, the resurrection of Yeshua or Jesus or rebirth. Okay, so read the rest of that. Okay. Now, there's a good article that on the Passover, and even going back to, I think, 2017, I saw this article here. So we were talking about the 10 plagues from the book of Exodus. Now, what I say may go outside this encompasses some people's awareness. So if we look at this piece here on Passover from history.com, and let me pull this up here. I have it up in Firefox. I need to open it in Google Chrome. So what is Passover? So Passover, or Pesach in Hebrew, is one of the Jewish religion's most sacred and widely observed holidays. In Judaism, Passover commemorates the story of the Israelites' departure from ancient Egypt, which appears in the Hebrew Bible's books of Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, among other texts. Jews observe the week-long festival with a number of important rituals, including a traditional Passover meal known as Seder, the removal of leavened products from their home, the substitution of matzo for bread, and the retelling of the Exodus tale. Okay, Tale. Now, if we look at, let me see here in a later self. Okay, for the sake of time, you can read the rest of this, and talks about Moses and Pharaoh and all this stuff. And the Bible doesn't tell you which Pharaoh they're talking about, but you can do all that. You can go through all that. Okay, so they talk about the story of Moses and all this. Okay, when he reaches adulthood, Moses becomes aware of his true identity and the Egyptians' brutal treatment of his fellow Hebrews. And okay. He kills an Egyptian slave master and escapes to the Sinai Peninsula, where he lives as a humble shepherd for 40 years. One day, Moses receives a command from God to return to Egypt and free his kin from bondage. Okay. According to the Hebrew Bible. All right, now, 10 plagues. When the Pharaoh refuses, in the story, they don't tell you which Pharaoh. Pharaoh is a title, not a name. Just saying. When the Pharaoh refuses a Nasubiti, because Nasubiti would be the correct term, God unleashes 10 plagues on the Egyptians. So God is punishing the African people. Okay. Including turning the Nile red with blood, disease, livestock, boils, hailstorms, and 3 days of darkness, culminating in the slaying of every firstborn son by an avenging angel. Okay. Culminating in the slaying. Okay. So you killing African children, African infants. The Israelites, however, marked the door of their homes with lamb's blood, so the angel of death will recognize and, quote unquote, pass over each Jewish household. Terrified of further punishment, the Egyptians convinced their ruler to release the Israelites, and Moses quickly leads them out of Egypt. This is the Exodus. The Pharaoh changes his mind, however, and sends his soldiers to retrieve the former slaves. As the Egyptian army approaches the fleeing Jews at the end of the Red Sea, a miracle occurs. God causes the sea to part. Okay, the parting of the Red Sea. All right, you see that in that movie, Ten Commandments, where they show Ramses and Nefertiti or Nefertari as Europeans, basically. I posted this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, a couple of days ago. It got a ton of comments. Let me pull this thing up here. This is this ahistorical depiction of ancient Kemetic people, ancient Egyptians. Let me go back to this here. Where is that? This right here. Let me pull this up. So I posted this. Let me see. Hold on. This is the okay, we got to slide down and pull that up here. So it was Yul Brynner and what was her name? Ann Baxter. She was Nefertari. This right here. So I posted this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. I said, straight up BS. These actors are portraying ancient African Kemetic Egyptian rulers as Europeans. This is from the Ten Commandments. So this is from, I saw this from Do You Remember When, the Facebook page, Do You Remember When? So this got like 587 comments. Right. Okay. So just more Hollywood nonsense. Now, it goes on to say that this piece here is from history.com, official website of the History Channel. You can look at other sources. As the Egyptian army approaches the fleeing Jews at the edge of the Red Sea, a miracle occurs. God causes the sea to part, allowing Moses and his followers to cross safely, then closes the passage and drowns the Egyptians. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Jews, now numbering in the hundreds of thousands, then trek through the Sinai desert for 40 tumultuous years before finally reaching their ancestral home in Canaan, later known as the land of Israel. Now, really is going to be close to probably about 2 million of them roaming throughout the Sinai desert for 40 years, according to the story. Now, if you go on to read this, then they have a section here called Questions of Historical Accuracy. They say for centuries, now this may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Okay. For centuries, scholars have been debating the details and historical merit of the events commemorated during the Passover holiday. Despite numerous attempts, historians and archaeologists have failed to corroborate the tale of the Jews' enslavement in and mass exodus from Egypt. Now, this is not an African-centered or Afrocentric source saying this. This is the History Channel. Although the ancient Egyptians kept thorough records, no mention is made of an Israelite community within their midst or any calamities resembling the 10 biblical plagues. There's also no, now this is extremely important because if you had close to 2 million people roaming through the Sinai Desert for 40 years, do you understand that to throw off the ecology of the desert and there still be evidence there of them today? There still be evidence. There's still be evidence. There are going to be skeletons. There's going to be things that they buried. The question you would ask is, what did almost 2 million people eat for 40 years in the desert? Where did they get water from? There's also no evidence of large encampments in the Sinai Peninsula, the fabled site of the Jews' wandering, or any sudden fluctuation in Israel's archaeological record that would indicate the departure and return of a large population. A handful of scholars, including the first Jewish historian Josephus, have suggested a link between the Israelites and the Hyksos, the shepherd kings that invade ancient Kemet, a mysterious Semitic people, possibly from Canaan, who controlled Lower Kemet or Egypt for more than 100 years before the expulsion during the 16th century BC. Most modern academics, however, have dismissed this theory due to chronological conflicts and a lack of similarity between the two cultures. I'm not telling you don't celebrate Easter. I'm just saying understand the history behind what it is that you're celebrating. Okay. If you have 1.5 million to 2 million people roaming through a desert for 40 years, there's going to be archaeological evidence left behind. Overwhelming. It's going to throw off the ecology. It's going to. They leave this evidence left behind. Okay, so I don't know what to say. Okay, all right. You don't have to believe a word that I say. Proper documentation ends all conversation. You do your own research. You don't have to believe me. Okay, I'm just saying. You don't have to believe me. We did that one. Oh, let's look at this here. NRF.com, National Retail Federation. So when I go research these different holidays and look at the money that they generate, okay, and I mean I understand people want to buy Easter clothes and a new suit and dress and hat and gloves and shoes, and I understand that. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying understand the history behind what it is you're participating in. More consumers hunting for bargains this Easter. This is from National Retail Federation. Consumers plan to spend an average $169.79 this year on Easter-related items, according to results of the annual survey released today by the National Retail Federation and Proper Insights and Analytics. A total of 80% of Americans will celebrate the holiday and spend a collective $20.8 billion, which is down slightly from last year's forecast of $21.6 billion. This is the type of money that's generated from Easter, $20.8 billion. Okay. Now, we want retail store. We want the economy to do well. We want African-American stores to do well, things like this, but not singling out Easter. But when I look at any of these holidays, we did the same thing for St. Patrick's Day, same thing for Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, things like this. I also go to National Retail Federation to look at what the projections are for spending. My background's in marketing, okay? So I learned about the National Retail Federation years ago. All right, so you can check that out also. NRF.com, National Retail Federation. Okay, so we did that. There's information. Britannica has some good information on Easter also that you can look at if you like. This one right here, Easter, because I definitely look at the sources I pay money to each month. I mean, each month, yeah, because I have a subscription to Britannica. So I use some of their information in my classes. So I had to get a subscription to them. So they have some information here on Easter. That's some good information here. And you see they talk about the venerable bead also. Yep, the English word Easter, which parallels the German word Ostern, is of uncertain origin. One view expounded by the Venerable Bede, who became Saint Bede the Venerable in the 8th century, because Bede dies in, was it 735 AD he dies? I think it's like 735 AD, May 26, he dies, right? The Venerable Bede. The Venerable Bede in the 8th century said that the word Easter was derived from Eostra or Eostre, the Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and fertility. This view presumes, as does the view associating the origin of Christmas on December 25th with pagan celebrations of the winter solstice, that Christmas appropriated pagan names and holidays from the highest festivals. Okay. Okay, so you can read the rest of this also. Okay, so we get that. We did that. I did all that. All right. We got all that, did that, and Time Magazine. And NRF. We deal with the 10 plagues. All right. Okay. Be sure, if you like this type of information, you can register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturday and Sunday. So we have some new classes starting up. Saturday, April 23rd. Saturday, April 23rd. Ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 10-week online history class that I teach. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. Some of the slides that I showed you, there's just a few of the slides that we use in the class because there's over 200 slides in the class. And we go through and look at history chronologically. We can't start studying our history in slavery. We look at the African presence in the Americas going back at least 51,700 years also. So we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. As soon as you register, we have some archived content that you can start watching. The class is on sale $80, regularly $130. Even after the course is over with, you can go back and watch the entire class. I just posted the link here. So as soon as you register, we got a ton of content for you to start watching. You also can get some bonus lectures from me also in digital format that you can stream, you can watch. And then we also have another class starting up from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement, Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And that's going to be on Sundays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., not 2 p.m., 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. That second class, that's going to pick up where the first one leaves off. Okay. The second class is going to be $80, also regularly $130. Now, we have a bundle pack you can register for both classes at a discount. It's a $260 value. You can register for both classes for $120. Okay, so click right there, register here. This is on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you've taken any of my online classes in the past, email me at TheAHNShow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAHNShow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and you'll get a 50% discount. All right, in these classes, we look at history chronologically. There's a timeline of history that we look at. We can't start studying our history in slavery, even when we study the transatlantic slave trade, which is important to study. We can't start in 1619 or in the 1440s when the Portuguese get involved. We have to understand the history chronologically and deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who enter into the Iberian Peninsula in 711 AD, today known as Spain and Portugal, from Africa. They're going from Morocco. This in this course, we not only deal with the transatlantic slave trade, but we deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with the African presence in the Americas going back over 50,000 years. In South America, going back at least 56,000 years ago. And in the land we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. Okay. And that deals with the Khoisan, and Dr. David Imhotep deals with this in his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And we know the Khoisan had the oldest DNA on the planet. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They come from Southern Africa. They go all around the world. And page 14 of his book deals with the discovery made in Allendale County, South Carolina in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear, which thoroughly documents an African presence in the land we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. This is before Native Americans came into existence. Dr. Albert Goodyear found 13 different types of evidence documenting an African presence in the area we call South Carolina. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, scales, linguistics, paintings, skeleton structures, and tools. They found 13 different types of evidence documenting an African presence. Okay, so you can also use that with your children as well. The class, I would say, is PG-13, both of them. That one in From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Okay, so you can register for those. And also, if you'd like this type of information, you support the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. All right. And we have the information on our website, and here's the link also. And when you go to our Cash App account, it'll say Michael and show my picture there also. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. Monday through Friday, basically I'm on 11 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we have the information here on our website also. We're celebrating our 12th year anniversary of me broadcasting the African History Network show. First started March 10th, 2010, and it's been 6 years of me doing it on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. Download the iHeartRadio app, search for the African History Network show. They have about 300 of my audio podcasts there of my shows and broadcasts. You can also listen to 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF through the iHeartRadio app as well. You can listen to me there live, or watch me on Facebook and YouTube. The African History Network on Facebook and Michael Imhotep on YouTube. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring the African people, people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Oh, I got to tell you about the HAPI conference. So I've been talking about this, and it's going on in Detroit. Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small will be here. I'm wearing my HAPI shirt. HAPI is one of the original names for the Nile River. Got to tell you about this. The Power in One Conference, Power in One Unity Conference, Saturday, April 30th, 2022, Doubletree Hotel in Detroit. Sunday, May 1st. We have 3 of my teachers going to be here doing presentations. Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene. Then we also had Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Mawulana Karinga, Infadushi Jahutimas. We should have him on the show this week. Jabari Osazi, Asar Imhotep. I think we have him on the show also. Asar Imhotep, Dr. Ken Harris. They're all going to be doing presentations. Scheherazade Ali, Dr. Alicia Watkins. They'll all be doing presentations. I'm not sure if I think I may be on one of the panels or something. I'll be a vendor there though as well. This is taking place at the Doubletree Hotel. We're going to post the link here. We'll put this on our website also. If you can't come in person, you can live stream this from around the world. Okay, this is the Power and Unity Conference. So if you can't come in person, that's fine, not a problem. You can live stream it from around the world. We're going to post a link here, and it has the link for you to register. All right, we got that. And we'll put that on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage, so you can register there as well. All right, we have to get out of here. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.